Okay. So we should both be recording.
Got it. Yeah. Awesome stuff. I'm excited.
Great. Yeah. I'm glad to have you on, man. I think this is going to be a great episode. We're going to talk about branding, and I'm sure that you're excited about branding because that's what you do.
Yes, sir. So you could go, I just want to let you know, Jeff, you could go as deep as you want, personally, professionally, as long as it's going to give your audience value and yourself value. I'm a pretty much an open book when it comes to this stuff, because I truly believe that when you share those vulnerabilities and those horror stories, that's when people actually really learn.
Yeah.
And I think that is really important. I could sit here for an hour and talk about how great I am and how much success I've achieved, but I don't know if they're really going to learn much about that. You know, everybody loves to hear how you got knocked down and how you got back up. So I'm happy to go as deep as you want.
Okay. That's great. Yeah. And that's what I like to do as well. I mean, I like to give the good, the bad, the ugly, just a whole picture versus the I guess you would say the pie in the sky type thing. Everything's great. I have great clients, great business, great everything, and business doesn't roll like that, unfortunately.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
So cool. Well, we'll go ahead and just get started, and we'll talk about branding, and we'll just dive into it.
You got the one sheet, right, Jeff?
I do. I'm looking at it right now.
Okay, yeah. Excellent. Yeah. So I like to give that. Sometimes it gets to you, sometimes it doesn't. That's why I'm always checking.
Oh yeah, it's nice. Actually, I have a little takeaway from it. I'm like, okay, I need to get a one sheet, get my one sheet updated with that. I like the way you have it structured.
Thank you.
So cool. All right. Well, we'll count it down. 3 and 2 and 1. Welcome, marketologists. This is another marketing strategy session. Today I have Henry Kaminsky Jr. Now, see, he wasn't expecting the junior part, but I have him on the line with me, and we're going to talk about branding. And we're going to talk about branding a little different than usual, but this is going to be really exciting. I mean, his resume is incredible. I mean, his client list is incredible, and his knowledge is incredible. Henry, thanks so much for taking some time to spend with us.
Jeff, I'm super pumped. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
So first off, I want to get into who you are. Now, it's on your website, and I was listening to who you are and how you become a pretty much fighter and been victorious from birth. So give us a little insight about who you are and how you became who you are today.
So every podcast I come on, I try to make this story shorter and shorter to keep it as punchy as possible. So I'm gonna give this a whirl. So, here's what happened. When my parents got married, they wanted to start a family right away, and medicine wasn't the way it was back then. We're going back, late 60s, early 70s, and they just did not have the capabilities of getting pregnant. There was issues with my father, issues with my mother that were unknown. So these two knuckleheads tried for 16 years to try to start a family, and they were unsuccessful. And then as 79, right, 80, medicine got a little better. My mother went in for a short surgery. Boom, 9 months later, here I come. So fast forward 2 years, my mom's in the kitchen trying to do her thing and make sure I'm okay. But I'm in the other room in my crib, and she comes in and I'm blue and unresponsive. So she freaks out, runs me to the hospital, and they realize that I lost all the nutrients out of my body from over urinating, because my mother kept giving me water to try to calm me down, because I was a little bit of a colicky baby back then. And again, this is the story that I was told as a kid, and it didn't make sense to me at the time. And then as I got older, it all, the pieces of the puzzle they all come together. So they get me back to life. And as I was growing up, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, I would always hear my mother tell the story about I was her miracle baby. And I never understood what that meant. And then I realized, like, maybe I'm not supposed to be here, but I am. And so what am I going to do with this life while I still am here physically. Well,
Yeah.
I want to make a difference. I want to make something of this life, because not everybody gets a chance like I did. Look, just go to any local hospital and go to the peds oncology ward and see what's going on there, and you'll get it. Right. So
Yeah.
I just said to myself, you know what? I'm here on borrowed time. I'm going to make the best of it. And I'm just going to run through this thing called life and see where it takes me. And so I've always been a scrapper. I've always been somebody that never really had a lot of guidance as a kid. Like my father, unfortunately, my parents went through a horrible divorce. So my father got custody, and now he's working 4 jobs to keep food on a table. And this guy was a mechanic for UPS for 33 years. I mean, he was just a master at his craft, but he wasn't the next Bezos. So
Yeah.
it was very interesting growing up like that. So I always had this hustle because I always saw him working, but there was a lot of times where I was out there kind of fending for myself, like learning life as a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, moving around a little bit, and coming into a city freshman year of high school where I was the minority of the school. So there was like 50 Caucasian kids in the whole school, and it was very diverse as far as culture. So I thank God for that every single day, because the school that I went to prior wasn't very diverse. And so it was very interesting to learn different cultures and to see how different people act, and to actually feel what it was like to not be the majority. And that really helped me tremendously accumulate my communication skills. Because there was a lot of times where I was approached and people had a preconceived idea of who Henry Kaminsky was. But when I opened my mouth, it was a different feel. It was a different story. And to this day, Jeff, I still get that. So, not to go too deep into the personal side of things. Again, I'll go as deep as you want, but it's very interesting because I want to tie this back to branding. A lot of times we see things at face value, and we make this assumption or this judgment, like maybe it's cheap, maybe it's amateur, I see a lot of these personal brands out there, their websites and their online presence looks like they started 2 weeks ago and they made their own website, and they're a do-it-yourselfer, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And meanwhile, they got 25 years experience and they're masters at their craft, but their online identity looks like they just started 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but what I'm saying is it's reality. People are going to see that and be like, I'm going to go over here. This guy looks more established. This woman looks more established. I trust that. So, and then they go and meanwhile, those people are probably 10x more expensive than you, but they're going over there because their online presence built up the trust, the credibility, the authority better than you.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show how important it is to be very cognizant of what your exterior looks like, and does it align with your interior?
Yeah. Now, dig into that a little bit more with branding. First of all, explain what branding is to those that might not know what it is. Now, our base, their businesses, they should know what branding is, but some may not. They may have a misconception on what it really is. And then let's talk a little bit about that, how your brand ties into your business culture or ties into your personal values.
I love it. Okay. So the definition of branding that I really have an affinity towards is from a guy by the name of Marty Neumeier. He has a few books out there, and what he calls branding is the gut feeling people get when they interact with you or your product or service. So when they walk away, what do they feel? Right? What do they feel? That's brand. So you may think you're one thing, but your audience is feeling something else. That's what your brand truly represents right there. So that's that. So when people say, well, I thought branding was like your logo and your website and this and that, like, yeah, those are brand assets. They help evoke that feeling and emotion, but it's not just a one prong thing that makes a brand what it is. You know, a logo is going to make you or may not make you more memorable, right?
Okay.
So that's what branding is at its core. It's that gut feeling that people get about you. So how does your online presence or your brand identity, because that's when we get into like design and stuff, how does that truly represent the value that you deliver? So Jeff, I've always been a guy, I grew up very humble. We were never poor, but we never had the nice cars, the nice clothes. My father used to take me to Canal Street in Manhattan, Chinatown, to get my school clothes. So I never had that kind of upbringing. Yeah. So I always was intrigued by the stuff.
Okay.
And I said to myself, when I get to a point where I could afford that stuff, I'm getting it. And I got to tell you, when I first started my business, it was extremely successful, and I indulged, let's say, and maybe a little bit more than I should. And what I realized that was people actually saw right through me.
Okay.
They were like, Henry, you don't need that stuff. We love you for who you are. Like, you don't have to show us through your stuff that you're a tough guy, a hard work, not a tough guy in the physical sense, but like a guy that is a scrappy guy that will not take no for an answer and get, achieve what he truly wants. We don't need to see the cars and stuff like that. And so what happened was a lot of my family, a lot of my friends, they started to get extremely resentful towards me because I was kind of throwing it in their face.
Oh, okay.
And I had this attitude about me, like, you can't tell me anything. And that caught up to me real fast.
Wow.
It caught up to me real fast. And then I realized that I was not being true to myself. And I was just I was doing a podcast recording just before this one. I had a guest on, and that topic came up. And because I grew up very with a low self-confidence.
Okay.
I had a very low self-esteem growing up. And I would use the stuff to kind of boost me up, right?
Yeah.
But what it was really doing was it was actually pressing me down. And it wasn't a real true identity of who I was. So I had to remix that. I really had to remix that and face my skeletons that were in my closet. Okay. So what are you doing this for? What are you doing? That makes sense.
It's so interesting that a lot of us do that. A lot of, I always used to ask this question: why do people that are rich, let's say, or wealthy, or spend so much effort trying to impress people that are poor and have not? For instance, you have a superstar athlete. Let's just use that. We all know they're an athlete. They're making millions of dollars. They're a celebrity. Everybody knows their name. And they have an entourage of people that nobody knows who they are, that comes from the hood, that has two nickels to rub together. And then they spend all this money popping bottles and buying all this expensive stuff and showing off all this lavishness to impress people that couldn't afford it and to sway their opinions. When it's like, yeah, but why are you trying so hard to impress people that have an opinion for stuff that they can't even afford? So they have you at a higher standard than they can be at, and you're spending so much to impress them instead of just being yourself. Because once the money goes, will they still be around? Will they still be with you? And I never understood that. I'm like, why is this one guy or girl spending so much effort and expense to impress people that put you at a standard that they could never live up to or are not living up to. I'm not saying could never, but at the time are not living up to. And we do it even with businesses. We try to make our business so grand, and we're trying to impress a lot of people that you're like, okay, well, this is what I offer. Will you patronize my business? Oh man, I can't afford that. But you should be doing this though. And they're like, wait a minute, but I'm listening to you. Why am I catering my business to you when you are truly not my customer or my client?
Yeah. That's a great point, Jeff. And let's get into that, because I think it's very, very important. If you want to build a successful personality brand online, say you're a coach, a consultant, a speaker, an author, subject matter expert in whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I would say is really defining who your client is probably the most important part of the branding process, from before you even get into any design work, anything like that. Because what I tell my clients is this: we're not designing this business for you. And it's sort of like a shell shock for them. I said, we're designing this business for them. So if we don't know who these people are, then we're designing blindly, which is going to cost you a lot of time, money, and energy. And you're not going to be happy with the results. So I tease them a lot when we get done with the brand strategy and we go into the design phase. I tell them, all right, I'm going to present some logo concepts in the next few days. Mm-hmm. When I send them over, you and I are going to have a sit down and we're going to discuss these. But here's what I'm going to tell you right now. If you come back to me and tell me that your wife doesn't like the color blue, or your 7-year-old daughter doesn't like that typeface, I'm firing you as a client.
That's so true.
Right? I said, unless they are, Jeff, unless they are your client, I don't care about their opinion.
Yeah.
I don't care about their opinion, because if your ideal client can't resonate with the identity and presence of your business online, you're not going to have a bit. You're not going to have a business. So for long. So, So when they get that, right, it's like something like clink, like really sinks in. And that's the key. So let's help your audience a little bit understand how to identify your ideal client, right? Okay. So you need to understand, all right, there are certain pains, challenges, and desires that your ideal client wants or needs or is experiencing. So what are you doing to find those things out? Okay. So there's some cool resources out there. I mean, if you just go to a competitor's website and you look at their testimonials and you read between the lines, I like to say, of those testimonials and see what was the pain point that was solved, there's your clue, right? Video testimonials of competitors. Listen to the language that they use. Use the same language in your marketing. Okay. That's going to connect. That's going to like click. Ooh, this person is speaking my language. You ever been on a sales call where they say, now you're speaking my language, and you get all excited because you're like, oh, this sale is going to close. Yeah. Well, you could start doing this intentionally by leveraging your competitors' testimonials and really dissecting them and understanding them. Now, the other thing is I don't spend too much time on demographics, because that's kind of standard. You could do that quickly, but psychographics is a lot heavier of a, what's the word I'm looking for? I would say I would put more emphasis on psychographics. So what is psychographics? It's why people do what they do. So if they have an affinity towards Range Rover, why? Yeah. Right? If they like Patagonia brand, why? Like, you got to get to the bottom of that.
Let's dig into this a little bit, Henry.
Yeah.
You speaking my language, Henry. So here's the thing. Range Rover. Do you buy a Range Rover because of the reliability? No. Everybody knows Range Rovers are not reliable. Do you buy it because of the look? Maybe. But you buy it because of the status that it gives you. And people don't even, it's so funny because they don't want to admit, I'm not buying it because of the car. And I'm a car guy. And so the more expensive the car, usually the less reliable, the worse on gas. I remember going to like a dealership and I was looking at some Ferraris, Lamborghinis, McLarens. And I'm like, why do they only have 20,000 miles on it? And they were like, well, these cars, you really can't drive them that far. I mean, really, after about 2,000 miles, you're going to have to get an oil change, which is going to cost you about $5,000. After they start doing this and that, they're going to say, you know what, this costs too much, and they're going to trade it back in. Mm-hmm. Their only purchase is to show off. And I started saying, that's the real reason. That's what you're buying. You're not buying because everybody says, well, you're buying a Lamborghini because it can go 200 miles per hour. You'll never go 200 miles per hour. So you're not buying it for that. You're not buying it for speed. You'll never go that fast. And in Atlanta with the potholes and how low they are to the ground, you won't go 60 miles per hour in those cars. So it's like that. I love what you're saying with psychographics. Why? What is the real reason people do business?
Yeah. And what does it say about them? Right. Yeah. What does it say about them as an individual? And again, this isn't to judge, it's to get a better understanding of who you're working with. I'll give you a quick example. I had a client come to me recently who was in desperate need of a rebrand. Okay. Mm-hmm. He was in the game for 10 years, very respectable in his profession, but he was getting disrespected in a way that caught up to him, meaning he had a lot of connections.
Okay.
Right. But people were coming up to him because he was such a nice guy. They were kind of squeezing him for his connections, but nickel and diming him when he went to send them a bill. So if you really had that respect, people would just be like, all right, send me the bill. They wouldn't be nickel and diming. So funny story happens. I'm on Instagram and this woman reaches out to me and says, I work for this firm and I think the principal could really use your help. And I said, and she kind of explained to me the positioning aspect of branding. So if you're not, so this is poor positioning.
Okay.
Let's talk about this, right? If you're positioned well online, people will either disqualify themselves immediately by saying what you said before, I can't afford this person, or they'll say, this guy is exactly what I'm looking for. All right. That's good positioning. That's good positioning. So she comes to me and she says, I want to connect him to you. What is the process? So I said, we have a brand assessment that I do prior. It's $500. It's not free. I said, tell him to go through the assessment process. You'll get on the phone with me and we will discuss where you're at, where you want to be and what's stopping you from getting there. So he does it. Okay. He does it. So he moves forward with the brand strategy and we go through the whole process. And here's the thing. I thought he was doing this for himself. And I think a part of him was.
Okay.
But I think the other part of that was to tell this woman who works for him, to show this woman who really respected him. And he had a close relationship with her, that he was the goods.
Okay.
Like he's going to put his money where his mouth is, and he's going to level up his game. It's like a wife that's constantly haunting you because of you gained all this weight over the years.
Yeah.
Right. And then finally you say, all right, that's it. Watch this. And 90 days later, you look better than you did when you were 20. Right. Like, I feel like that was one of the big reasons why he moved forward with a $25,000 engagement, because he said, you know what? She's right. I am who I am. but I'm not living up to it.
Okay.
Right. And I think that was one of the driving forces of why he invested in himself at that level. So what does that say about him? It says that he's got the cylinders, right? He's a 12-cylinder engine, but he was only working on 6.
Yeah.
So that made me realize, all right, that needs to be my marketing message moving forward. You know that you're a Ferrari, but you're acting and presenting yourself like a Toyota Corolla.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why? Right? And so I'm a huge hip hop guy. I grew up with hip hop my whole life. And one of my favorite rappers of all time is Nas. I grew up with him. I mean, he's 10 years older than me. So like, I remember being 13 years old, listening to his music on the New Jersey Transit bus at 13 years old, listening to his messaging. And he came out with a new album recently. And one of the lines in his songs, he says something along the lines of, what happens to a king when they don't realize they're a king?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that just resonated with me because my whole life I grew up like that.
Yeah. I
didn't think I was a king. So therefore I acted one way where people would come up to me outside. And this is when the universe gives you signs, right? People would come up to you and people come up to me and say, why do you tolerate that?
Yeah.
Give you a quick example. We were at a conference a couple of years ago. This guy comes up to me and says, oh, I've been watching you online for a while now. And I love your stuff. Thank you. I appreciate you putting in that effort. He's like, I got to tell you something. He said, when I first saw you, with your bald head and your tattoos and your New Jersey accent, I thought you were like a big prick. and he said, but you're not. And it was surprising to see that side of and so I'm standing next to this other guy who's pretty well known. And so I respond to like, yeah, I get that a lot. Don't worry about it. Right. This guy sitting next to me says, don't you ever apologize for that again. Now, you could have heard a pin drop, Jeff. And we were in like a crowded bar. Yeah. You could have heard a pin drop. And the guy started to get like backpedal. The guy was like, oh, no, I didn't mean any disrespect. The guy next to me said, Henry, that's his problem. That's not your problem.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy crow. That was just, I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. And you just have to, so anyway,
but it's amazing how much we look for validation and acceptance outside of ourselves. And the perception that others have isn't the same perception that we have of ourselves. I know a lot of times people will assume a certain thing and you'll try to fit into the box that they assume that you're in. And it's like, no, wait a minute. Be true to yourself. But unfortunately, a lot of us haven't understood who we are yet because we've always been looking for validation and acceptance. So we haven't taken any self-assessments to say, this is who I am. And it's funny because a lot of times people will see you in a light and you're like, how do you see that? I don't understand. Like for myself, sometimes people will paint me in a picture and it'll be people I don't even know. I never met them before. Mm-hmm. And I'll walk into a place and they'll act a certain way. And I'm like, wow, do I look like somebody? And it's like, you are somebody, they're treating you in a status that you don't even see yourself. It's sort of like that meme that everybody shows. They show a kitty cat looking at a lion. The lion's the shadow. It's like the reverse of that. We're the lion, but we see the kitty cat and we're like, yeah, we're this, we're that. But it's always because we never really took a self-assessment and said, yeah, I am a king, but I'm up here playing like a peasant
Yeah.
because I've always looked for validation from other people.
Yeah.
And whatever they tell me is what I'm going to accept.
So there's another line in one of Nas's songs in his new album, and it's I'm gonna botch this up, so bear with me. It's something along the lines of what other people think of you means nothing. What you think of yourself means everything.
So true.
Right. And that's something that you gotta own. And to put this, like, to kind of to wrap this up in a beautiful bow and to bring this all back to branding, when you achieve the ultimate success with your branding, it's when you feel comfortable in your own skin and you are the truth. You are the truth. And that's something that people are actually afraid of.
Yeah.
They're afraid of it. And so I've seen the most success in business when I let it all out the way it's supposed to come out. I don't edit. Like, if you listen to any of my podcasts, I don't edit. I haven't edited an episode in 445 episodes.
Wow. Yeah.
What's out there is out there, because here's my why. I didn't have the upbringing that my 4-year-old son is getting. So I had to learn shit the hard way. Excuse my language.
Oh, we all grown here.
Right? So when I'm putting out content on social media, that content is going to live long after I'm gone.
Yeah.
Okay. My son's going to get to an age where he's going to Google daddy's name and be like, what the hell does he do again? And he's going to watch this episode. He's going to listen to this podcast. He's going to see me on YouTube.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing in every piece of content is I'm giving him those cookie crumbs to follow.
Yeah.
So that he if he ever decides to open up a business, he knows how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
He knows the struggles that I went through. So now he doesn't have to go through them.
Yeah.
And he grows up a stronger man than me. That's what I'm doing this for. And I'm doing it through helping other people see themselves the way they should see themselves. And so that's why people ask me all the time, like, that's why you do what you do. And I go, absolutely. Because again, the saddest thing in life is wasted talent. And that is something that I learned from one of my favorite movies in the world, A Bronx Tale. And it was basically that was the premise of the whole movie. The saddest thing in life is wasted talent. And I feel like there's so many people that get into their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, look back and say, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. And you know what? I'm 40 years old. I turned 41 on Friday. And I promised myself last year, I will not live my next 40 years the way I lived my first 40.
Yeah.
And so be it. And so there's going to be things that are going to make people uncomfortable. Henry's going to be a different person moving forward. And you know what? If I was the same person I was yesterday, that means I'm dying. I'm not growing.
Yeah.
So that's something that I want you guys to pay attention to is what are you doing to nurture your brand? Are you giving it the proper nutrients it needs? So for example, are you hiring the right mentors or the coaches or the consultants? Are you putting the money, in the right places, right? That's going to bring you back the return, right?
Yeah.
Because what you give is what you get. And that's how I live my life. When my business isn't doing well, I take a time out and I say, how much effort have you put in this quarter?
Okay.
And if the answer is, well, not that much, well, there's your sales sheet. So what you
Makes sense.
give is what you get. And I am a firm believer that is the way the universe works, whether it's business, personal, what have you.
Yeah,
So put it in and you'll get it out.
that makes sense. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Mhm.
Now tell me about the difference between your personal brand and your business brand. So, now we're talking a lot about being authentic as
Yeah.
far as on a personal level.
Yeah.
But you can also be authentic as a business. There's a lot of businesses out here operating outside of their true selves. So tell me the difference between the two.
So a business brand, see, the real question is, should I build my business brand or should I build my personal brand? And I tell them you have to build both.
Okay.
But keep in mind that your business brand will be an offshoot of your personal brand. So for example, you see my site and you see the colors and you see how premium it looks and you see I put a lot of effort into that, right?
Mhm.
Like I put a lot of effort into what I do. Like my house looks like a museum besides this sanitizer bottle behind me that I forgot to move out of the way. But like and that
Product placement.
right. But and again, I hear my wife upstairs cringing. She keeps the house really clean. I maintain it, but it just goes to show I'm a very neat person. I'm a very minimalistic person. I don't need a lot of stuff. I like space. I like things to breathe. So when you look at my brand personality, you'll see less is more. You'll see whatever shouldn't be there will not be there. And so that just goes to show how my personal brand correlates to my business brand. So your business brand is going to be an offshoot of your personal brand. Now, I think just people make a big deal out of a personal brand that I don't think you necessarily have to. I think if you really want to put effort into a personal brand, just be your damn self.
But that's hard, Henry. Everybody, it's hard to be yourself in a world of sensationalization, or is that a word? Sensationalization.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to be yourself because everybody's putting on these faces to be everything else.
Yeah. I wish. I mean, to your point before, why are you doing all of these things to attract or to impress people that don't really give a damn to begin with? One,
Yeah.
and two, it's just, who are you impressing? Impress yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like impress yourself. I'll give you a funny story. Like, and some people will take this the wrong way, but I laugh. I was posted a picture of me and my son the other day. We just got back from West Palm. Me and my wife were married 10 years. So we took a little trip down to West Palm. So I take a picture with my son and I put it on Facebook and I say, my favorite guy on the planet. And he's a good friend of mine, but he's a troll at the same time. He writes, which one? Right? So I laugh because I thought to myself, and I know him, and I know what he's gone through in his life, and I understand why he wrote that. Not to throw him under the bus, but I said to myself, if I don't love myself, if I am not my favorite guy, then how could I be his?
That's true.
Meaning my son.
Yeah.
And so if I can't love myself, how could I love anybody else?
And that's a great point, because I was talking to somebody the other day about relationships. We were talking about marriage and so forth. And, the problem is we look for everybody else for love, and we can't give love because we don't love ourselves. And so we're disappointed because we're like, this isn't a good relationship. But here's the thing, the funny thing about the pandemic, when people had to stay at home and look in the mirror all day, it changed a whole lot of people's perspective about everything, because now you're like, well, this is who I really am. Because, you know, before we could always go out and we could always have all these distractions, you know.
Yeah.
When you have to sit and look at yourself all day, then it's like, yeah, this is me. You know?
And that's why I think what made me the person that I am today is a lot of personal development. To this day, I'll be honest with you, I'm starting EMDR therapy on Friday. EMDR therapy is a therapy that was introduced to me by, I have a mindset coach that I meet with every 2 weeks. I think it's very important as you're growing your business to have your board of directors, right? And so your board of directors could be a business mentor. It could be a therapist or a coach, right? It could be individual coaches, like a personal trainer. I have a personal trainer, air quotes, for social media. So they help me with my social media, right? And that's all they do, right? So finding that board of directors. So my mindset coach says, you know, I've been with you for 4 years. I know you probably better than your wife knows you. I would recommend EMDR therapy. It is a tremendous therapy that has phenomenal result, specifically for past trauma in your life.
Okay.
And I said, okay, let's do it. So I was a little hesitant at first. And then I'm talking to a client just randomly. And client says to me, I got to tell you, past few months haven't been that good, struggling a little bit. I started this therapy. It's called EMDR. I said, that's it.
That was your confirmation.
The universe is telling me you got to go in on this, because I saw a huge change in this client's personality over the, you know, when I was talking to him. So I said, doing it. So I found a practitioner right here in town for, and I signed up. So that's when you asked me, like, I know it's easy. You basically said it's easier said than done to be your true self. I think when you spend the time, you know, I have a journal that I write in every morning. When you put in the effort and invest in yourself, it gets easier. I'm not going to say it gets, everything is beautiful, but it gets easier. And who knew that we were going to spend 47 minutes talking about like personal development, but personal branding has a lot to do with personal development, because I think when you are living the life that you've dreamed, you've designed in your head, that's when you win.
It is. And nowadays, with so much out there, people can see through, like you were saying, people can see through if you're being you or you're putting on a face. You know, and it's harder and harder now to mask it, to say, oh, I'm, you know, it's so funny. For instance, and I don't want to shame anybody, and they can take it how they take it. But during the pandemic, I've seen more millionaires or millionaire claims that I made more money on the pandemic than I've. I'm like, where's this money coming from? I mean, businesses are shutting down. You know, people are unemployed. Nobody's going out. How all of a sudden everybody's business is the best year they've ever had in business? I'm like, mathematically, it's not possible. You know, I'm not saying that it's not possible for anybody, but it's not possible for everybody. And I'm like, look, let's just be honest. If you had a bad year, you had a bad year. It's understandable. But everybody's posting these pictures, and I'm thinking, so when did you take this trip? Because we were supposed to be on lockdown. You know, this is the best year ever. And they all on the beach. And I'm like, we're supposed to be on lockdown. You know, what are you talking about? But people are so used to putting on these faces.
Yeah, they do it for the gram, right? They do it for the gram. And it's sad because, you know, my wife and I struggled with this for a few years. You know, I would put things up online that would make her uncomfortable. And again, I was not very comfortable in myself 5-6 years ago. So I would put all that stuff out there and people saw right through it. I'll give you a quick example. I was running a Facebook ad and it was me getting out of a private jet. And this troll came over and he said, I don't even know who you are. I've never heard of you.
Mhm.
but you're coming out of a private jet. So like, tell me who you are. And I was like, this is fantastic.
Mhm.
So instead of me getting all butthurt about that, you know what I realized? I don't have enough substance out on social media.
Wow. Yeah.
So what did I do? Took the ad down. Now, if I ever run an ad, you know what it is? It's me teaching something.
Okay.
That's my ad. It'd be 2-3 minutes long at max, but it's me
Mhm.
actually teaching a branding concept.
That makes
How
sense.
are you going to troll that?
Yeah, it makes sense.
How are you going to
And,
troll that?
and even with the other one, you coming out the jet is what we've been so used to seeing over infomercials and so forth. The guy with the yacht and the two girls, and you know,
Listen, if somebody's going to hire you because you're coming out of a private jet, think about that for a second.
yeah.
Do you really want to work with somebody like that? And that's what was happening, Jeff. I was attracting all of that clientele, and I was going crazy because I was like, I don't like these egos, but
Yeah.
yet I was just attracting who I was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here's what, because we're running low on time. This is what I want. If you've been listening thus far and this long, this is the biggest takeaway out of this conversation I want you to get. Remember this: the quality of your brand will determine the quality of your clients, and the quality of your clients will determine the quality of your life. So if you want great clients, be the client you wish to attract. So if you don't want nickel and dimers coming your way, then don't nickel and dime people, because what you give is what you get.
Great point. And we'll end on that note. I mean, that is a great, great, great point. Great advice. So, Henry, thank you so much. We're going to get on your private jet and we're going to fly out to someplace, someplace soon. And thanks so much for the advice. If anybody is listening and you want to reach out, his is actually Unique Designs, and he spells it uniquely. So understand it's unique. It's UNQ. What is it? How do you spell?
Yeah, it's Unique Designs with a Z at the end, not an S. .net.
Exactly. Yeah, I got that Virginia education. Us Virginians. It's like, how you spell that again? Because we'll put some slang on it real quick. But yeah, reach out to him, and he has he has a free masterclass. You can sign up for the free masterclass and get more of this insight from him. And like I said, when you go to his site, you're going to see, I didn't want to pump him up, but you'll see who he's worked with. You'll see some of the things he's done, and, you'll get a lot of value out of it. So thanks, Henry, for spending some time with me. I really do appreciate it. And I appreciate the insight. And this was almost a therapy session more than a marketing strategy session.
Jeff, what a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for having me. And I would love to have you on my show as well. And so we can keep the conversation going. I'd love to have you.
Definitely.
And thanks again for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, definitely. Just let me know. I'd love to be on the show.
Will do.
Cool. So, all right, let me stop the recording.